In the quiet charm of Willow Creek, a quaint suburban town nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York, James and Claire Caldwell were the couple everyone envied. Their love story began like a scene from a classic romance novel, a serendipitous encounter at a cozy coffee shop on Main Street. James, a sharp-witted accountant in his early 30s, was climbing the ranks at a prestigious firm. Claire, a compassionate third-grade teacher with a knack for making every child feel special, radiated warmth that could light up the gloomiest room. He was smitten by her infectious laugh, she was drawn to his steady gaze and subtle humor. Their courtship was a blur of moonlit walks, handwritten notes, and dreams whispered over glasses of wine. 2 years later, they exchanged vows in the ivy-draped Willow Creek Chapel, surrounded by friends who toasted to their unbreakable bond. For years, the Caldwells were the epitome of suburban bliss. Childless by choice, they poured their energy into their careers and their elegant home on Maplewood Drive. Their dinner parties were legendary, candlelit affairs where James's dry wit and Claire's storytelling wove magic into the night. Claire's book club, held in their sunlit living room, buzzed with lively debates over novels and Pinot Noir. James's poker nights, filled with cigar smoke and hearty laughter, were a staple among his colleagues. Their life was a carefully curated masterpiece, a testament to love and ambition intertwined. But as the years crept into their 50s, the first shadows began to fall. The laughter that once echoed through their home grew faint, replaced by perfunctory exchanges about bills or schedules. James buried himself in work, his late nights at the office becoming more frequent. Claire, sensing the growing distance, threw herself into her teaching, hoping to fill the void. As their 20th anniversary loomed, both began to wonder if the life they'd built was still enough. Neither could have foreseen the storm that was about to unravel their world, a storm named Lila Harper. Lila was a burst of color in Willow Creek's muted palette. At 19, she was a dreamer with a heart full of ambition and a sketchbook brimming with designs for a fashion line she swore would one day grace runways. But dreams didn't pay the bills, and with her single mother battling breast cancer, Lila juggled community college classes and a gig as an Uber Eats driver. Her beat-up 2006 Toyota Corolla, adorned with stickers from indie bands and climate activism, was her lifeline. Lila approached every delivery with a spark of joy, her vibrant red hair and quick smile winning over customers. She wasn't just delivering food, she was spreading a little light, one doorstep at a time. It was a stormy Tuesday evening when Lila's path crossed with James Caldwell's. She'd just picked up an order from Vittorio's, Willow Creek's upscale Italian gem, and was navigating the rain-soaked streets of Maplewood Drive. The grand homes, with their manicured lawns and glowing windows, felt like a different world. Pulling up to 1427 Maplewood Drive, Lila grabbed the steaming takeout bag and sprinted to the porch, her red hair peeking out from her raincoat's hood. When the door opened, she found herself face to face with James. He looked worn, his tie askew, his shirt rumpled, his eyes heavy with something unspoken. For a moment, their gazes locked, and the air seemed to hum with an inexplicable charge. Lila's usual cheery greeting faltered, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. James, handing her a crumpled tip, felt a jolt he hadn't known in years. In that fleeting exchange, a spark was struck, one that would soon set their lives ablaze. James couldn't shake the image of Lila Harper. Her red hair, damp from the rain, and the way her eyes seemed to pierce through his carefully constructed facade haunted him. At 52, he was a man who had everything: a corner office, a beautiful home, a wife who still turned heads. Yet, something about Lila's unguarded smile stirred a longing he thought he'd buried long ago. He began ordering from Vittorio's more often, each time hoping it would be her at the door. When it was, their brief exchanges, about the weather, a new book, or her dreams of designing, felt like stolen sips of something intoxicating. Lila, too, found herself drawn to James. He was unlike the boys her age, with their fleeting attention and shallow charm. There was a weight to him, a quiet strength tinged with melancholy that made her want to know more. Deliveries to Maplewood Drive became the highlight of her shifts. She'd linger a moment longer, her heart racing as their conversations deepened. One rainy night, as thunder rolled across Willow Creek, James invited her inside to wait out a downpour while he fumbled for cash. In the dimly lit foyer, their shoulders brushed, and the air crackled with unspoken desire. Without thinking, they closed the distance, their lips meeting in a kiss that was equal parts guilt and exhilaration. For James, it was like waking from a long, gray dream. Lila's touch, her breath against his skin, ignited a fire he hadn't felt in decades. But the weight of his wedding band burned against his finger. She's 20 years younger. I'm married. This is wrong. Yet, the thought of her eyes, bright with unfiltered want, drowned out the warnings. For Lila, the kiss was a revelation. She'd dated, flirted, dreamed, but nothing compared to the way James made her feel seen. The forbidden nature of it only fueled her desire. She knew she should walk away, but the pull was magnetic. Their affair began in earnest, a dangerous dance of stolen moments. James fabricated late meetings and business trips, his lies to Claire growing more elaborate. Lila picked up extra shifts, telling her mother she was saving for her fashion line when she was really slipping away to meet James at a rundown motel on the edge of town. In those cramped rooms, they shed their roles, husband, teacher, student, and became something else entirely. James found passion he thought he'd lost, Lila found validation in the arms of a man who listened to her dreams. But deception has a way of fraying the soul. James's lies became a tangled web, each one harder to maintain. He snapped at Claire over trivial things, his guilt manifesting as irritation. Claire, confused by his coldness, doubled down on her efforts to reconnect, which only made James pull further away. Lila, meanwhile, struggled with her role as the other woman. She cancelled plans with friends, her grades slipped, and her mother's worried glances grew harder to ignore. The thrill of their secret was tainted by the knowledge that she was part of a betrayal. Yet, neither could break free. They told themselves their love was different, that it defied the rules of the world around them. As summer faded into autumn, however, the cracks in their fragile illusion began to widen. As autumn painted Willow Creek in hues of crimson and gold, James's double life grew increasingly precarious. He invented a fictional client, a tech mogul with a messy divorce, to explain his late nights and sudden trips. Claire, initially sympathetic, began to notice inconsistencies. One evening, she mentioned running into James's colleague Nathan at the farmer's market. Nathan, puzzled, remarked that the firm was in a slow period, with no major projects demanding overtime. James, caught off guard, muttered about client confidentiality and fled to the garage, leaving Claire staring at the door, her heart sinking. The close calls multiplied. A receipt from Vittorio's, tucked in James's coat pocket, listed a bottle of wine they hadn't shared. A faint trace of lavender perfume lingered on his scarf, a scent Claire didn't wear. Each discovery was a pinprick, sharp and unsettling. James, paranoid, grew careless. He once answered a call from Lila while Claire was in the next room, his voice dropping to a whisper as he lied about a wrong number. Claire's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing, the silence between them heavier than ever. Lila's life, too, was unraveling. Her mother, weakened by chemotherapy, noticed her daughter's distraction and mood swings. "You're burning yourself out, sweetheart," she'd say, her voice frail but firm. Lila's friends, tired of her last-minute cancellations, began to pull away. Her sketches, once vibrant, gathered dust as she prioritized stolen hours with James. The motel meetings, once thrilling, now carried a bitter edge. She hated the secrecy, the lies, the knowledge that she was breaking a marriage. But when James looked at her, his eyes soft with something like love, she convinced herself it was worth it. As October's chill settled over Willow Creek, Lila's feelings deepened. What began as a fling blossomed into something she dared to call love. She dreamed of a future with James, weekends in a cozy cabin, morning sketching while he read the paper. During their motel rendezvous, she'd whisper about running away together, her voice bright with hope. "We could start over, James. Somewhere new, where no one knows us." James would smile, his expression tinged with sadness, and change the subject. But Lila was undeterred. Her Instagram, once a gallery of art and selfies, began to feature cryptic quotes about soulmates and love-defying age. She even wrote a poem for her creative writing class, a thinly veiled ode to their affair, earning a concerned note from her professor. Claire, meanwhile, was no longer the trusting wife. The inconsistencies in James's stories gnawed at her. Late-night calls he took on the porch, the way he flinched when she touched him, it all pointed to a truth she wasn't ready to face. One night, unable to sleep, she slipped into their walk-in closet and began searching his jackets. Her fingers brushed against a folded note in his blazer pocket. With trembling hands, she opened it, her breath catching at the sight of looping, feminine handwriting. "Last night was electric. Can't wait to see you again. Yours, L." The words hit like a physical blow. Claire sank to the floor, the note crumpled in her fist, as silent tears streamed down her face. Her husband, her partner of 20 years, was betraying her. Claire became a detective in her own home. She pored over credit card statements, circling charges from places they hadn't visited. She watched the Uber Eats deliveries, her stomach twisting each time she glimpsed red hair through the window. She even installed a tracking app on James's phone, justifying the betrayal as a necessary evil. Every piece of evidence was a shard of glass, cutting deeper into the life she thought she knew. Finally, unable to bear the doubt, she called a private investigator recommended by a colleague who'd survived a bitter divorce. "I need the truth," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Whatever it is, I need to know." Lila's desperation grew alongside Claire's suspicions. She was tired of being a secret, of stolen glances and hurried goodbyes. Her love for James had become a wildfire, consuming her reason. She began to push him, her voice sharp with urgency. "Leave her, James. We're meant to be together. Don't you want to be happy?" James, torn between his feelings for Lila and the life he'd built, felt the walls closing in. Leaving Claire meant dismantling his career, his reputation, his place in Willow Creek. But Lila's pleas, her tear-streaked face, were impossible to ignore. She started showing up at his office parking lot, hoping for a chance encounter. Her deliveries to Maplewood Drive became reckless, each one a gamble for a moment with him. As winter's first snow dusted Willow Creek, the affair began to unravel. During a motel meeting, James arrived distracted, his mind heavy with guilt. Lila, sensing his distance, tried to lighten the mood, but her words felt hollow. When she pressed him again about leaving Claire, he snapped. "This isn't a movie, Lila," he said, his voice cutting. "I have a life, a career, responsibilities. I can't just throw it all away." Lila flinched, her eyes welling with tears. "Is that all I am to you? A mistake?" The argument that followed was raw, exposing the chasm between her youthful idealism and his middle-aged pragmatism. They parted in silence, the air thick with hurt. Their meetings grew strained, each one a reminder of their impossible situation. James, drowning in guilt, pulled back, his texts to Lila becoming curt. Lila, desperate to hold on, became clingy, her messages pleading for reassurance. The breaking point came during a late-night phone call. Frustrated by James's indecision, Lila's voice turned cold. "If you won't choose me, I'll tell Claire myself." James's heart stopped. "You don't mean that," he pleaded, his voice hoarse. "Please, Lila, don't do this." But the line went dead, and the fear of his world collapsing settled into his bones. December brought festive lights to Willow Creek, but for James, it was a descent into chaos. Claire's silence at home was deafening, her eyes sharp with unspoken accusations. Lila's threats hung over him like a guillotine. Every text, every delivery, felt like a step toward disaster. He was trapped, a man unraveling under the weight of his own choices. Claire, armed with a dossier from the private investigator, planned to confront James after the holidays. Photos of him entering the motel, receipts, even a grainy image of Lila's car parked nearby, it was undeniable. But fate intervened sooner than she expected. A neighbor called one afternoon, mentioning James's car in the driveway when he was supposed to be at work. Claire's heart raced as she left school early, her mind a storm of dread and resolve. She pulled into Maplewood Drive and spotted Lila's Toyota a block away, its stickers glinting under the streetlights. Her pulse thundered. This was it. She entered the house quietly, her keys trembling in her hand. The air was still, but as she climbed the stairs, muffled voices drifted from the bedroom, their bedroom. Each step amplified the sounds, a laugh, a sigh, the unmistakable cadence of intimacy. Claire stood before the door, her hand on the knob, her breath shallow. A lifetime flashed before her, first dates, wedding vows, quiet nights dreaming of forever. With a surge of courage, she pushed the door open. The sight was a knife to the heart. James and Lila, tangled in the sheets, froze in horror. Lila's red hair spilled across the pillow, her eyes wide with panic. James scrambled to cover himself, his face ashen. "Claire, I can explain," he stammered, but the words died under her gaze. 20 years of love, trust, and promises lay in ruins. Pain gave way to a white-hot rage Claire had never known. "How could you?" she screamed, her voice shaking the room. "In our bed? In our home?" Lila, clutching the sheet, looked between them, her voice small. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this." Claire rounded on her, her eyes blazing. "Shut up. You're nothing but a child, destroying everything." James stepped forward, hands raised. "Please, let's talk calmly. We can fix this." Claire's laugh was bitter, jagged. "Fix this? You've shattered everything." The argument erupted, years of resentment pouring out. Claire's accusations cut deep, James's defenses crumbled, and Lila's sobs filled the air. The room was a pressure cooker, emotions boiling over. Then, in a moment of eerie calm, Claire turned and left. James and Lila exchanged a glance, the silence unnerving. They didn't know she'd gone to the study, where James kept a handgun for protection, a decision that would soon prove fatal. Claire returned, her face a mask of icy resolve, the gun steady in her hand. James's eyes widened. "Claire, put it down," he begged, his voice trembling. "Let's talk." But Claire was beyond words. "How long?" she demanded, the barrel trained on him. "How long have you been with her?" Lila, paralyzed, stared at the gun, her mind screaming, "This isn't real." James, hands up, tried to reason. "Please, this isn't you. You don't want to do this." The room was a tableau of terror, the only sound their ragged breaths. Then Lila, in a burst of panic, lunged for the gun. Time slowed. A struggle ensued, limbs tangled, voices shouting. James dove to separate them, his heart pounding. A deafening shot rang out. Lila stumbled back, confusion in her eyes. She looked down, a crimson stain blooming across the sheet. "Oh," she whispered, before collapsing to the floor. Claire dropped the gun, horror crashing over her. James fell to Lila's side, pressing his hands to the wound, blood seeping through his fingers. "Stay with me," he pleaded, but her eyes were already dimming. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The perfect life on Maplewood Drive was gone, replaced by a nightmare none of them could escape. Detective Ethan Morrow arrived at 1427 Maplewood Drive as dusk settled over Willow Creek. The house, with its pristine facade and rose-lined walkway, stood in stark contrast to the chaos within. Upstairs, he found a scene that would haunt him for years, Lila Harper, barely 20, lay lifeless on the floor, a blood-soaked sheet her only shroud. James Caldwell sat against the wall, his hands and shirt stained crimson, his eyes vacant. Claire Caldwell perched on the bed, staring at the gun as if it were a cursed relic, her face eerily calm. The house buzzed with activity as crime scene technicians catalogued every detail: blood spatter, bullet casings, the position of Lila's body. Morrow interviewed James and Claire separately, piecing together the fractured timeline of betrayal and rage. James's voice was hollow, his words disjointed. Claire spoke in monotone, as if reciting a script. As dawn broke, Claire was led out in handcuffs, her head bowed. Paramedics wheeled Lila's body away, the zipper of the body bag echoing in the silent street. Morrow stood on the lawn, the weight of the tragedy settling over him. Willow Creek would never be the same. The trial was a media circus, every detail of the Caldwells' lives dissected for public consumption. Emails, bank records, even Claire's book club notes became tabloid fodder. The image of the perfect couple was obliterated, replaced by a story of infidelity, desperation, and violence. Claire's defense argued emotional distress, painting her as a woman pushed to the brink by betrayal. The prosecution countered with the cold calculation of her actions, the gun a symbol of intent. The courtroom was a battleground of tears and accusations, with James's testimony, halting and guilt-ridden, offering little clarity. In the end, Claire was convicted of second-degree murder. The judge, citing her clean record and the crime's emotional context, sentenced her to 16 years. As she was led from the courtroom, her once vibrant spirit seemed extinguished, her shoulders slumped under the weight of her actions. James, his career and reputation in tatters, resigned from his firm and left Willow Creek, a ghost of the man he'd been. The town, once a haven of suburban dreams, grappled with the ripples of the tragedy. Neighbors whispered, friendships frayed, and the house on Maplewood Drive sat empty, a silent monument to a love that turned to ash.